Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and finding your path to your best emotional physical health. Welcome back to my series on cognitive decline and aging and kind of prevention of dementia and those kinds of things. If you like what you hear, please don't be afraid to subscribe because I'd love to bring you more videos on these and similar topics. Also, don't forget to download my 5 free videos on finding the path to your best emotional and physical health. And share this information with someone that you think needs it. I'd like to have this information get out and so that people who need it have simple tools available to them to help them live their best possible life. So with that, let's kind of get into today's topic. Today's topic is about diet regarding cognitive decline and how do we manage that. There's a lot of new research coming out around diet and lifestyle and how that affects not only cognitive decline, but of course our overall aging process. There's a lot of genetics involved that will actually change the way we express our genes and hopefully help us live a little bit longer or with a better, higher quality of life as we age. So there's a few things you need to know about the brain. So the brain can operate on either glucose or fats, specifically beta hydroxybutyrate, okay? So, and our body is able to make both of those depending on what it needs, okay, and what's available to it at the time. We evolved during a time when we were hunter-gathering and we may or may not have had a lot of food available to us 3 times a day like we do now, so that we may have been able had to have eaten in like small portions or fasted more often because of food scarcity and those kinds of things. So we actually evolved with an ability to utilize both those sources of fuel, which is a good thing. So the idea that we can reduce our caloric intake or switch our usage of fuel for the brain can actually help our body become more flexible and reduce insulin resistance. So as if you've listened to some of my other videos, you probably realize that insulin resistance is a big problem in today's world. It helps contribute to cardiovascular disease, dementia, and a whole host of other diseases. It helps create diabetes and other problems that leads to death and cognitive decline in general. So we need to kind of figure out how do we manage that. There's lots of stuff out there, so it's very overwhelming when you start hearing, well, you need to do this, and you need to do intermittent fasting, and you need to, keto, and all those other things, which can be really, really overwhelming. Now, most of the time, those kinds of diets are so restrictive that they cause issues because people can't stay on them long term. The ketogenic diet is one of them. So while I will always advocate for reduction in processed carbs, a true keto diet where you're doing like 20 grams of overall, what we call net carbs after you've taken out the fiber, can be so restrictive and high in unhealthy fats if you're not really careful about the fats. So then when you try to start figuring out, okay, I want healthy fats and carb restriction, sometimes there's difficulty figuring out what's left to eat. So one of the things that I tend to advocate is a little bit more plant-based. We want a lot more plant-based foods, and we also want to maybe restrict our carbs down to 65 is a general good goal, something like that, so that you are not, and that's net carbs, so that you're not overdoing the restriction, okay? So that's one of the ways to kind of help return to a little bit more carb sensitivity and insulin sensitivity. The other way is intermittent fasting, and there's a couple different ways to do this. A lot of people feel they can't fast because they get low blood sugar, and that may or may not be true depending on what's actually going on with them, and they may have to work their way up to fasting. But fasting a couple days a week where you don't eat anything for the first 2 meals of the day can actually be really, really effective. And then you eat a larger meal around maybe you probably can't go quite to dinner time, but 2 or 3 p.m., which may or may not work for some people's schedules. So that's one option, and that's only a couple days a week. Some people try to fast for a long, like they think they need to fast for like days upon end, which sometimes is out there on the internet. That's usually difficult. I've never been able to do that, so I don't even try anymore. But a couple of days a week, especially if I've eaten a lot before the day before, then I will go maybe as long as I can till I get hungry. And then once my body tells me I'm hungry, then I'm going to go ahead and eat. So the beauty of calorie restriction and intermittent fasting is it actually does a couple of genetic enhancements. So it actually lowers a gene expression called mTOR. mTOR is a gene that actually tells us to store fat. And it increases with age. It's just normal because it wants you to try to, protect yourself against, starving to death as you get older. So while that's not an issue in today's world because we have plenty of food and food scarcity is not an issue, then it helps create obesity and all kinds of other issues. So one of the things that decreasing mTOR is that it actually will turn on a couple of other genes and a couple of other expressions of enzymes, especially one that I won't even begin to try to say. Well, I will try to say it. Calreticulin, and I'm probably saying that wrong, but at any rate, it actually increases your antibody response to infections and has a protective response. So if you can decrease your mTOR, you can go back to improving your immune system. And it can also help lower your inflammatory markers. And I've talked off and on about inflammatory markers and based upon some of the stuff we put in the body and just overall aging. So when we can fast or do some kind of intermittent fasting, then we are going to protect ourselves against those inflammatory markers a little bit better. So if you're not interested in counting carbs and you don't really want to worry about losing weight, which is fine, one of the best ways to protect against cognitive decline is to do what we call a keto flex diet. So yes, you need to reduce sugars, especially simple processed sugars, and increase plant-based carbohydrates. So eliminate the pastas, breads, those kinds of things. Eat all the fruits and vegetables you want because those are going to be higher in fiber. And then you do what we call keto flex, which is Keto Flex 12-3, okay? So, and the reason it's called that, and this is based on some work done by Dale Bredesden, who is a wonderful neurologist that has done a bunch of Alzheimer's research. And he advocates for, and I've used this with clients, so I know it works, and I've used it for myself, and I know that it works as well. And if you've done a bunch of research on fasting like I have, fasting works. So, the idea of 12 is you have 12 hours between your last meal and your breakfast, okay? So whatever you eat. So, and that's really not that far. So you're talking about, like, so say you eat dinner at 6, you don't eat breakfast until 6. Pretty easy, okay? And the other 3 stands for 3 hours between your last meal and your bedtime. So if you know when you go to bed, so say you tend to go to bed around 9, so you want to eat no later than, say, 6, 5:30 or 6. And then you don't want to eat breakfast until 5:30 or 6 the next morning. If you can go even further, you do much better. And so this is to try to create some flexibility in the brain and its ability to use either glucose or the beta-hydroxybutyrate as a fuel source. So, and then if there's problems, and of course you can go into testing in some of this, ideally you want to have, ketone levels of about 1 to 4, which is not a heavy ketosis like you're doing a ketogenic diet. They want more than 4. And you could measure this if you want to, if you're really trying to test yourself and kind of get into all the numbers. You can find a number of different meters that will measure your ketones and to see if you're kind of in that low ketogenic rate. I always kind of got right about in the one to two, and I felt just fine, and it really, really helped. And you can actually, especially if you're not trying to lose weight or you're thin or something like that, and you're just trying to improve cognition, you can improve your ability to use beta hydroxybutyrate by introducing it into your diet through MCT oils or ketones, ketone salts, ketone esters. And if you have questions about that, please let me know because we can talk about that some more. But in general, you can create that metabolic flexibility just through the fasting. Now, if you're interested in losing weight, you can do that by either extending the fast or do, like I talked about earlier, where you're going to have a fast for a longer period of time and go without eating as long as you can before having your first meal. I tend to try to just decide when I'm getting hungry. Some days I get hungry at 7:30, and some days I don't get hungry till 10 o'clock. It kind of depends on, basically how much coffee I have and if I've got some MCT oil on board or something like that. So you have to kind of play around with it and see how you feel and do a little bit of journaling maybe and kind of see if you feel better if you do more of the beta hydroxybutyrate, aka MCT oil or ketones, as far as your thinking and your cognition goes. And then kind of go from there and just kind of decide, how do you feel overall with your energy levels and your thinking. And that'll help kind of restore this insulin sensitivity to the brain. Now, if you really, really want to lose weight, you can use this method as well, but you must do calorie restriction as well. There's been some conflicting studies that say intermittent fasting does not create weight loss. Well, no, it won't if you don't have some additional calorie restriction. So if that means that on the days that you fast, it's most effective if you do like a fast a couple days a week where you really only eat 500 to 600 calories and then you eat normally the rest of the week. That's more likely to create weight loss if that's one of your goals as well. But your overall goal needs to be returning to that insulin sensitivity so you utilize sugars more effectively for both your brain and your body. Okay, so that's all I have for today. I will let you all go and have a good rest of your day. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'd love to bring you more information for whatever you're interested. And also don't be afraid to connect with me on the website for some personal coaching regarding making behavioral changes that will give you your best quality of life. Again, thank you for listening and have a great day.